listeners, Advocacy Coordinator Tatum here to say thank you for starting your day with our peerless, trusted Progress Texas podcasts. This critical midterm year, you can invest in the largest digital network for Texas progressives by becoming a monthly member for our summer drive. If you haven't joined or increased your gift yet, you can join today at the link in the show notes, and we'll thank you with union-made merch to match your values, plus a shout out on the Daily Dispatch. Thanks in advance for funding the progressive Texas you want to live in today.
Part of why we're doing this tour of border communities is to show off the beauty, show off the rich culture of these communities. Many of you know that my mom grew up in Laredo. Some of you know that I come out to Big Bend every year. So the border means a lot to me personally. And too often politicians come down here to demonize, to weaponize, to grandstand for their own benefit. And it hurts our local businesses. It hurts our border communities. We're trying to do the opposite with this tour. We are trying to show off the beauty, the culture, the opportunities that are here in our border communities all throughout Texas. And I think we need more elected officials in both parties who are willing to listen to these local officials, who are willing to support and have their backs in Washington, D.C.
State Rep and U.S. Senate nominee James Tallarico there. Audio courtesy of Reagan Stone from Rep. Tallarico's 750-mile tour of border communities captured in Alpine yesterday. It's Tuesday, July 14th, 2026, and this is the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch, rapid response on the breaking news stories Texas progressives need to know. I'm Chris Mosier. Progress Texas amplifies progressive values, leaders, and actions through our no-paywall podcasts and digital media. We reach millions of Texans monthly, and that's made possible by folks like you who invest in independent progressive media by Texans for Texans. Thanks to Bill Holston, David Griggs, and David Sauer for their ongoing sustaining support. At the very core of our mission and vision here at Progress Texas is doing all we can to highlight the ways that life could be better in Texas, not just for those who can afford luxury, but for all Texans. And it just so happens that the morning feed is packed with reporting indicating that in Texas, there's almost no way from here but up. Molly Wilhelm at the Houston Chronicle writes on a new national ranking of the best U.S. states in which to live from the global business news network CNBC, which has found Texas the second worst such state in the entire nation. We trail only Tennessee in poor quality of life. CNBC gave us an F based on our shameful and widening failures regarding infrastructure and public welfare. After 30 years of Republican leadership, our state sucks on crime, worker protections, reproductive rights, and overall social inclusiveness. But perhaps the primary driver for this low ranking is our sad state of healthcare accessibility. 16.7% of Texans completely lack health insurance of any kind. A huge number of our citizens, including hundreds of thousands of children, a rate that's more than double the national average. Even for those with some degree of coverage, most of it's not very good. And financial barriers further block care access. 17% of Texas adults have reported skipping necessary doctor visits due to their out-of-pocket cost. And even for insured Texans, locating care is a difficult hurdle, as our state ranks dead last in the nation for primary care physicians per capita, double that last one for Texans not living in the larger cities. What this data clearly shows is that while Texas remains a powerhouse for commerce, a state's strong economy does not necessarily translate into a high quality of life for the people who live there. Pivoting in that direction, Texas is highly ranked in another CNBC survey, the one calculating the top states for business. However, we've slipped from the number 2 position to number 4, and Democratic nominee for governor and state rep Gina Hinojosa has thoughts on why. Michael Carlos at the San Antonio Current says Rep. Hinojosa is assigning that drop to the failures of the now 3-decade-old Texas Republican regime, which is focused almost exclusively on economic growth with no qualms about saddling everyday working families with the costs of a corporate-first agenda that has been prioritized over the well-being of the public for over a quarter century. CNBC found in their business survey a significant recent worsening of key vulnerabilities in Texas, specifically noting declines in education, business friendliness, and technology. And once again, that terrible quality of life score that drove us to second from the bottom nationwide is bad enough to hurt business as well. Jeannie Hinojosa notes that a diverting of $1 billion from public schools into private school voucher programs, the skyrocketing of residential electricity and water costs, and massive corporate tax giveaways, all under Governor Greg Abbott's watch, are the root cause of Texas's recent decline in these metrics. And speaking of massive corporate tax giveaways, those have combined with unbelievably lax natural resource regulation to produce the dire threat of data centers. Governor Abbott has certainly read those tea leaves, and as we've noted, has recently spun around full circle. He's now touting his dedication to protecting rural communities from data centers, and more recently has declared that they'll have to produce their own power to operate in Texas, which is a losing prospect for the environment. Evan Simon at Wired writes on the catastrophe of pollution that data centers are already foisting upon our state, focusing in particular on the notorious OpenAI Stargate project in Abilene and the regulatory loopholes that have allowed massive AI data centers to quietly sprout all across the state. Simon cites a floodlight investigation that's found tech companies exploiting a small first, big later strategy via which they've used permit-by-rule classifications intended for low-level polluters like dry cleaners to bypass environmental reviews and public notice for their massive installations. And that's what's happened in Abilene. OpenAI's Stargate found a lane via these permits to construct a 360-megawatt fossil fuel plant right next to family homes without warning and with a full green light from the state to dump over 1.6 million tons of greenhouse gases and 1,000 tons of toxic air pollutants into the Abilene area every year. Across Texas, at least 38 data centers have exploited the same loophole, quietly legalizing over 2,100 backup diesel generators that stand to crank out nearly 2,500 tons of highly toxic nitrogen oxides each year. That's more than triple the emissions of our newest coal-fired power plants. So now, today, in Abilene and in communities across Texas, families are trapped next to towering exhaust stacks, enshrouded in constant dust clouds, trash, and industrial traffic gridlock kicked up by industry on quiet country roads. And almost without exception, the developers who have found Texas regulators and lawmakers all too easy to bowl over are already devising massive expansions to these same bills. Greg Abbott can say whatever he wants out on the campaign trail. The AI genie he let out of the bottle in Texas is hungry and aggressive, and at this point appears all but unstoppable. As we begin to wind down here, there's more news from the Texas GOP Bright Ideas Department, and that's to continue to clamp down on cannabis. Emma Ruby at the Dallas Observer says Texas Republican lawmakers, including colossal buzzkill Senator Charles Perry of Lubbock, are gearing up for a renewed assault on consumable THC products ahead of next year's legislative session, prioritizing prohibition over regulation. You'll recall that Governor Abbott vetoed a sweeping ban on THC consumables last summer due to constitutional concerns, which temporarily sidelined the issue during a special session that was supposed to be about flood relief and reform, but actually ended up mostly about the Donald Trump-ordered redistricting of Texas. As we've talked about, the main culprit regarding this continued backwards policymaking on cannabis is Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, who has made it his personal crusade to take away your gummies, and who was pissed, to put it mildly, when Abbott harshed his mellow last year. Once again, we like to think of elections in terms of the tangible results they offer, and those are pretty clear in this case. Democratic challenger Vicki Goodwin has been very clear that she thinks Texas doesn't need a nanny state approach on cannabis, pledging to advocate for THC products to be regulated more or less like alcohol is, namely letting grown-ups be grown-ups in Texas. A sensible regulation advocate in the lieutenant governor's office would more or less squash any attempts from the legislature to pursue cannabis prohibition in Texas. Austin listeners, there's a very cool event coming up in East Austin on Friday. Our friends at Common Cause Texas are hosting a free matinee screening of the documentary film John Lewis Good Trouble at Eastside Cinema in Austin on Friday the 17th at 12 noon. Snacks to be provided. And there will be a post-screening discussion on John Lewis's legacy and how we can all get into some good trouble this election season. RSVP is requested ahead of time. See that link in the show notes. This election year, you can support the real free press by investing in pro-democracy, pro-justice, progressive storytelling delivered by Texans for Texans. Join Progress Texas this summer ahead of the midterms and become a monthly donor today, or increase your giving for our summer-sustaining donor drive. With your partnership, we can reach more independents, progressives, and young voters who must be mobilized in order to win elections. So far, 3 donors have signed up or increased their gifts during our summer drive, and if you join them today, We'll thank you with perks for progress in the form of union-made merch to match your values. You can choose from our exclusive Resist coffee mug, a sweet Progress Texas summer koozie, and a mystery button pack. Plus, you'll get a shout-out on the Daily Dispatch. Our good friend DK Wilkerson was the first right off the bat to step up, and we're not surprised. Thank you, DK, so much for funding the progressive Texas you want to live in today. That's the Progress Texas Daily Dispatch for this Tuesday, July 14, 2026. Links to all these original stories can be found in our show notes. When lives in Texas are well funded by the far right, your support for fact-based reporting is needed and appreciated. I'm Chris Mosier. Thanks so much for listening. Have a terrific day. We'll catch you again right here tomorrow morning.